You make the correct decision. On paper, it is flawless. You have made the list of pros and cons, you have consulted the experts, you have followed the logical, sensible, and rational path that everyone agrees is the right one. You accept the job, you enter the relationship, you make the investment. And yet, every cell in your body seems to scream in silent protest. There is a deep, visceral, and entirely illogical feeling in your gut that you are walking in the wrong direction. There is a quiet, heavy resistance that you cannot explain, a profound sense of wrongness that has no place in your carefully constructed, rational world. This feeling of disconnect is a quiet epidemic. It is the chronic, low-level anxiety that hums beneath the surface of a perfectly safe and comfortable life. It is the profound, bone-deep exhaustion you feel at the end of a day in which you did nothing physically demanding. It is the strange and growing sense of being a stranger to your own body, of treating it less like a part of you and more like a vehicle that you are forced to refuel, maintain, and occasionally repair. We have become ghosts in our own machines, pilots living entirely in the cockpit of our minds, ignoring the vast and wise ecosystem of the vessel we inhabit. We live our lives from the neck up, and we wonder why we feel so profoundly ungrounded. There is a well-known phenomenon in medicine known as a phantom limb. An amputee, long after losing an arm or a leg, can still feel it with a vivid, and often painful, clarity. They can feel an itch on a foot that is no longer there, a cramp in a hand that has been gone for years. The brain's internal map of the body remains whole, and it registers the radical absence as a kind of ghostly presence, as an ache for something that is missing. We, as a modern, civilized culture, are suffering from a collective case of a phantom limb. We feel a constant, aching absence, a deep and persistent sense that something vital has been taken from us. But because we have been trained to forget that this limb ever existed, we are unable to name our pain. We call it anxiety, we call it depression, we call it burnout, but these are just names for the symptoms of a much deeper wound. The limb we have lost is our animal self. It is our instinct. It is our deep, intuitive, non-rational bodily wisdom that was honed over millions of years of evolution to navigate a complex and dangerous world. It is the gut feeling that alerts us to danger in a perfectly charming stranger. It is the primal need for connection to the rhythms of nature, to the rising and setting of the sun. It is the wisdom of the body that knows its own limits, its own needs for rest and movement, far better than any productivity app. This is the part of us that knows things without needing data, that feels truth without needing a logical proof, and its absence is the source of our deep and nameless ache. This loss was not an accident. It was an amputation, performed slowly and methodically over centuries of our history. A great and terrible forgetting was orchestrated, a process in which society convinced us that this vital animal part of our humanity was not just unnecessary, but that it was dirty, dangerous, and shameful. We were taught to fear it, to control it, and to eventually erase its memory entirely. This video is an act of remembering. It is an archeological dig into the forgotten landscapes of our own souls. It is a search for the ghost of the animal we once were, and a critical investigation into how this great forgetting has neutered our power, leaving us to ache for a home we no longer know how to find. This great forgetting was not a single, sudden event. It was a long and methodical war waged against our own nature, a philosophical campaign that spanned millennia, designed to sever the human mind from its animal roots. To find the origin of this wound, we must travel back to the intellectual landscape of ancient Greece, to the thought of Plato. It was here that the first and most decisive hierarchy was established. For Plato, the world we perceive with our senses was a mere shadow, an imperfect copy of a higher, eternal, and perfect realm of ideas. This created a profound schism in the concept of the self. The soul, the mind, the faculty of reason, these were seen as noble, superior, and connected to that divine, perfect realm. The body, on the other hand, with its messy appetites, its inconvenient instincts, its inevitable decay and death, was seen as an inferior vessel. It was a source of error, a distraction from the pure life of the mind, a prison from which the soul longed to escape. This idea that our true self is a pure spirit trapped in a flawed animalistic body would be amplified and carried forward by centuries of Western religious thought, creating a deep and lasting suspicion of our own physical nature. If Plato created the schism, it was the 17th century philosopher René Descartes who took a philosopher's scalpel and made the separation clean and absolute. At the dawn of the scientific revolution, Descartes famously declared, "Cogito, ergo sum," I think, therefore I am. In that single, powerful statement, he located the entirety of human identity and existence in the act of conscious thought alone. The I is the thinking thing, the rational mind. The body, he argued, was something entirely different. It was a complex machine, an automaton of flesh and bone that operated according to the predictable laws of physics. Our identity was the ghost in the machine, a disembodied consciousness that just happened to be piloting a biological vehicle. This radical mind-body dualism became the foundational assumption of the modern world. The body was no longer seen as a source of wisdom or intuition. It was an object to be studied, measured, controlled, and optimized by the superior, rational mind, just like any other machine in nature. The ancient instinctual wisdom of the body was rendered irrelevant, a noisy and unreliable ghost of our primitive past. This philosophical amputation was then made into a concrete, daily reality for millions of people by the Industrial Revolution. For most of human history, the rhythm of life was dictated by the rhythms of nature. We rose with the sun, we worked according to the seasons, we rested when our bodies told us to. Our connection to our animal self, while perhaps not conscious, was baked into the very structure of our existence. The factory shattered this connection. The invention of the mechanical clock and the piercing blast of the factory whistle imposed a new, artificial, and brutally rigid time upon human life. The body's natural ancient need for variation, for sunlight, for rest, was now seen as a fundamental inefficiency in the great machine of production. Humans were expected to function like the machines they operated, consistently, repetitively, and without complaint. We began to see our own bodies as industrial equipment, tools whose animal needs were an inconvenient drag on economic progress. And this brings us to the final stage of the forgetting, the information age. If the Industrial Revolution turned our bodies into machines, the digital age has threatened to make them entirely redundant. We are now actively encouraged to live as disembodied minds, floating in an endless sea of data. We work, we socialize, we entertain ourselves, we fall in love, all as avatars in a non-physical space. Our bodies have, for many, become little more than inconvenient life support systems for our brains. Necessary but annoying hardware that must be fed, exercised, and medicated, so that our minds can get back to the more important business of the screen. From Plato's prison to Descartes' machine, from the factory's clock to the digital cloud, the campaign has been a stunning success. We have devalued, disciplined, ignored, and finally forgotten the profound wisdom of our own animal selves. The amputation is complete. I did not learn this history from a book. I learned it by living it. My entire early adult life was a testament to the success of this great forgetting. I was the perfect product of a system that taught me to valorize the mind and to treat the body as a separate and, frankly, somewhat embarrassing piece of hardware. My life was a well-designed cage. It was clean. It was logical. It was optimized for productivity. My career path was chosen not based on a deep instinctual calling, but on a spreadsheet of pros and cons. My days were governed not by my own energy levels, but by the rigid geometry of a digital calendar. I was, I believed, a master of my own rational world. I was the ghost in the machine, and I was proud of how well maintained my machine was. But the animal inside the cage does not die simply because you ignore it. It just gets sick. And my body began to send a series of increasingly desperate distress signals. A persistent, tight knot in my stomach before important meetings. A jaw so clenched during the day that it ached at night. A profound and unshakable exhaustion that no amount of sleep could cure. I treated these signals not as a form of wisdom, but as an inconvenience. The knot in my stomach was just anxiety to be managed. The exhaustion was a lack of discipline to be overcome with more caffeine, more exercise, more willpower. My mind was the master, and the body's complaints were the whining of an unruly subordinate that needed to be silenced. My gut feelings, those primal, non-rational instincts, were treated with the same contempt. I remember meeting a potential business partner once. On paper, they were perfect. Their resume was flawless. Their references were impeccable. Their pitch was logical and compelling. My rational mind gave the project a resounding yes, but my body had a different opinion. As I sat across from them, I felt a quiet, cold tension in my own skin. A primal animal sense of distrust that I could not logically explain. I dismissed it, of course. I called it an irrational prejudice, a failure to be objective. I trusted the data on the page over the data being transmitted by my own nervous system. And so, I entered into the partnership. It ended months later, not in a dramatic explosion, but in a slow and draining series of small deceptions and subtle manipulations, the exact kind of passive-aggressive betrayal that my animal instincts had warned me about from the very first moment. The cage I had built for myself was comfortable, but it was profoundly sterile. I would spend entire days under the hum of artificial lights, staring at a screen, breathing filtered air, my feet never touching the earth. The only nature in my life was the screensaver of a forest on my laptop, and a deep, unnamed malaise set in, a kind of spiritual scurvy. My life looked perfect on my calendar, but it felt, deep down, like a slow and orderly death. The animal in the cage was beginning to rattle the bars. The crisis came not as a single event, but as a quiet collapse. A period of burnout so complete that all of my logic, all of my discipline, all of my spreadsheets were utterly useless. The ghost in the machine had run out of fuel, and in the silent, defeated aftermath, for the first time, I stopped trying to control the animal and I simply listened to it. And what did it want? It was so simple. It wanted sunlight. It wanted to feel the grass under its feet. It wanted to rest when it was tired and to move when it was restless. It wanted to eat real food when it was hungry. It wanted to trust its own immediate, visceral perception of other people, regardless of their resumes. The great humbling confession is this: I had thought I was living a sophisticated, enlightened, rational life. But in reality, I had been living a profoundly impoverished one. I had been starving a vital part of myself. And the long journey back to a sense of wholeness did not begin with a new philosophy of the mind. It began with the simple, animal act of putting my bare feet on the earth and feeling the ground beneath me. The great forgetting was a process that unfolded over centuries. The journey of remembering, therefore, is not a quick fix. It is a slow, patient, and deliberate practice of reconnection. The goal is not to abandon the incredible power of our rational minds, to cast aside logic and reason, and to live as pure animals. That would be to simply trade one form of amputation for another. The goal is to heal the schism. It is to create a partnership, a sacred marriage, between the analytical intellect and the instinctual body. It is the journey of rewilding the self. This journey begins not with a grand gesture, but with small, consistent acts of listening. The first and most fundamental practice is to begin listening to the language of your body. For years, we have treated our bodies as objects, as machines to be optimized and commanded. We must now begin to treat the body as a conscious and intelligent partner, a source of profound wisdom. The practice is simple, but not easy. A few times a day, set a timer for just 2 minutes, close your eyes, take a breath, and simply listen. Do not try to fix or change anything, just notice. Start with your feet on the floor. What do they feel? Move your attention up to your legs, your stomach. Is there a tightness in your gut? A flutter of anxiety? Move to your chest, your shoulders. Are they tensed up toward your ears? Is your jaw clenched? Is your breathing shallow and tight? For these 2 minutes, you are not a manager trying to solve a problem. You are a student, humbly listening to a teacher. This simple act of paying attention is a revolutionary one. You are signaling to your nervous system, perhaps for the first time in years, that its messages are being received. Over time, this practice builds a bridge back to your physical self, allowing you to hear the body's whispers of stress or unease before they become the deafening screams of burnout and illness. Once you have begun to hear the language of the body, you can move to the second practice. You must learn to follow the scent of your intuition. Intuition, or gut feeling, is simply the name we give to our ancient, non-rational way of knowing. It is the accumulated wisdom of our animal ancestors, speaking to us in a language without words. We have been taught to distrust this faculty, to demand data and logical proof for every decision. To rebuild this atrophied muscle, you must start small, with low-stakes choices. When you go for a walk instead of following a pre-planned route on a map, allow your gut to decide when to turn left or right. Follow the path that simply feels right. When you are browsing a bookstore, instead of looking for the titles you think you should read, let your hand drift and see which cover, which title, it feels inexplicably drawn to. When you meet a new person, allow yourself, just for a moment, to register your immediate visceral first impression of them, before your rational mind begins to make its arguments and justifications. By honoring your intuition in these small daily ways, you begin to rebuild your trust in it. You are relearning your own native language. The final practice is to synchronize your body with the rhythms of nature. Our animal self evolved in a world governed by the sun, the moon, and the seasons. Our modern, sterile, artificially lit environments have completely scrambled this ancient internal clock, contributing to our sense of disconnection. The practice of rewilding, therefore, requires a conscious effort to re-establish this connection. It can be as simple as making an effort to get direct sunlight in your eyes for 10 minutes every morning, a powerful biological signal that helps to regulate your entire circadian rhythm. It can be spending 15 minutes in a local park, and for that time taking off your headphones and simply listening to the sounds of the wind and the birds. It can be the simple, radical act of taking off your shoes and standing on the grass for a few minutes, a practice known as grounding, which serves as a physical reminder to your body that it is part of a larger, living ecosystem. These are not mystical acts. They are simple, practical ways to reset the biological software that has been corrupted by the profound artificiality of modern life. They are a way of reminding the animal within that it has a home. We began this journey with the strange and persistent feeling of a phantom limb, a deep, chronic ache for a part of ourselves that was lost, but could not be named. We can now give it its name. The missing limb is our own animal nature. The ache is the cry of our forgotten instincts, a ghostly reminder of a power and a wisdom we were taught to disown. For centuries, our culture has celebrated this amputation as a mark of progress, as our great ascent from the brutish mud of our origins to the enlightened plane of pure reason. We were taught that the mind was a king, and the body was a disobedient beast to be tamed, controlled, and ultimately ignored. But this was the great lie at the heart of the great forgetting. The path to a whole and vibrant life is not found in the victory of the mind over the body, nor in the victory of the body over the mind. To live as a disembodied intellect is to be a ghost, alienated and ungrounded. To live as a pure, unthinking animal is to surrender the incredible gift of human consciousness. The true path, the difficult and beautiful work of our lives, is one of integration. It is the journey of healing this ancient schism. The goal is to create a new, more complete kind of human being, one who possesses the sharp analytical intellect of a philosopher, but who marries it to the grounded, instinctual, and full-bodied wisdom of a wild creature. This is the wisdom to build a detailed plan for the future, and the instinct to know in your gut when to throw that plan away. It is the ability to engage in a complex, rational argument, and the sensitivity to feel the unspoken emotional truth in the room. This integrated self is the cure for the phantom ache. It is the remembering of our forgotten parts into a powerful and cohesive whole. It is the wisdom of the beast, guided by the clarity of the mind. This journey of remembering is a quiet rebellion against a world that wants you to live from the neck up. If you're ready to continue this journey of integration, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. And now, let's begin the practice. Share your first act of listening in the comments below. What is one instinct or gut feeling you have been ignoring that you will finally choose to listen to this week? Your answer is a step toward becoming whole again.